Mr. Speaker, as we're considering the Department of Defense appropriations of 2025 that is going to cost the American people $831 billion, my amendment would be that none of the funds made available in this act may be used for the assistance to the Ukraine war. This is a war that has nothing to do with America. Ukraine is not a NATO member nation, and it is not the American people's responsibility to pay for this war, and it's not the American military's responsibility to fund it. My amendment would ensure that no further resources will be sent to Ukraine. To date, Congress has provided nearly $175 billion in assistance to Ukraine, including direct military aid, funding for their government, and other forms of economic assistance. For the past 4 years, we had a Democrat president that cared more about the borders of Ukraine than the country he swore to protect, the United States of America. They allowed our own country to be invaded by murderers, rapists, and terrorists, all while sending nearly $175 billion to defend the borders of Ukraine and fund their entire economy. Our country funded their government at $1 billion a month, and the American people were forced to pay for their businesses. At a time when our government shut down American-owned businesses, families could not afford groceries, and our people were suffering. It was reported that nightlife in Ukraine was thriving, and that there were more bars and restaurants open in the capital city, Kyiv, than before the start of the war. Yet the American people, they couldn't send their children to school, their businesses were shut down, and life here was closed, but the American people were paying for Ukraine. It was shameful that Americans were forced to foot the bill of the Ukrainian economy while ours suffered. Furthermore, Ukraine is one of the most corrupt governments in the world, and Zelensky is a dictator who, by the way, stopped elections in his country because of this war. He's jailed journalists, he's canceled his elections, controlled state media, and persecuted Christians. The American people should not be forced to continue to pay for another foreign war in a country that has no effect on our own and we are not contractually bound to defend. Mr. Speaker, I reserve.
Gentlewoman reserves her time. The gentlewoman for what purpose does the gentlewoman from Minnesota rise?
Madam Chair, I rise in strong opposition to this amendment.
Gentlewoman is recognized.
First, the majority has already eliminated funding for Ukraine security assistance initiative in this bill. It's zero. I personally believe that to be a huge mistake, and that only emboldens Putin. And President Trump seems to be agreeing now because just the other day he announced the decision to provide billions of dollars of equipment to Ukraine through our NATO partners. And I give the credit to the President for that decision. But now we have an amendment to further prohibit any support of Ukraine as they fight to defend their country from an illegal Russian invasion. Putin is attempting to rewrite the map of Europe through use of force. He's doing so in violation of international law. He's deliberately killing civilians, targeting hospitals, schools, destroying the economy and the livelihood of Ukraine in process. And Putin has put his thugs who are committing war crimes on a mass scale in the United States and the democratic nations of the world. Well, they're putting us on notice, and that's why we must strongly oppose him. If we do not, then he or other authoritarian leaders will likely try something like this again, either in Ukraine or elsewhere in the world. America is not alone in our military support of Ukraine. Our NATO and European allies are continuing to provide billions of dollars to support themselves, and that's in line with the decision that President Trump announced the other day. So let's not abandon the EU or our NATO allies now, and let's not abandon Ukraine. The Ukrainian people did not ask for this war. They deserve our continued support. I urge my colleagues to oppose this amendment. And, Madam Chair, I'd like to yield 60 seconds to the gentleman from California.
From California is recognized for 60 seconds.
I rise in opposition to the gentlelady's amendment. Sadly, we saw for years how the Biden administration failed to provide Ukraine the resources necessary to fight back in an effective way against Russian aggression. Just the other day, President Trump took decisive action provide weapons to Ukraine to defend against these unprovoked attacks. The President is right to support efforts to ensure innocent lives are no longer lost. He is right to undertake efforts to stop the bloodshed. As he continues to work toward a peaceful solution, we should not now remove the ability to provide what he thinks will help the Ukrainian people to prevent further losses and use as leverage to negotiate a peace agreement, hopefully very soon. With that, I urge a no vote on the amendment and reserve the balance of my time.
Madam Chair, I reserve the balance of my time.
Okay, the gentlewoman reserves, and the gentlewoman from Georgia is recognized.
Mrs. Speaker, how much time do I have remaining?
The gentlewoman has 2.5 minutes remaining.
Thank you, Mrs. Speaker. Democrats used to be the anti-war party, yet every single Democrat voted to fund the war in Ukraine. This funding has been approximately $175 billion of the American people's hard-earned tax dollars, yet the American people are in debt by $37 trillion in debt. It's said that the Ukrainian people didn't ask for that war. Well, the American people didn't ask for this debt. And the American people are not obligated to defend every single country around the world. At what point do we defend our own citizens and their ability to actually be able to afford life in America? As our debt continues to climb because Congress refuses to stop spending on America's last priorities and refuses to stop spending on foreign aid and foreign wars, the American people will have no chance. Now that our border is closed, thank God to Tom Homan and ICE and President Trump and his administration, we are conducting the largest deportation operations our country has ever seen. And we must continue to put America first and continue to address the needs of our own people within our own homeland. This means no more assistance to Ukraine. The only assistance that America should be providing is a pathway to peace, not furthering a war. That is not what the American people want. That is not what the American people voted for. Americans deserve to not have their hard-earned tax dollars fund a bloody and deadly war in Ukraine. We need peace, and we need peace all over the world. This is an unwinnable war in which Americans are footing the bill, and it's resulted in mass casualties in both nations. Americans don't want to pay for murder. Rough estimates show that over 1.5 million people have been killed and injured since the start of this war. A Ukrainian assessment earlier in 2024 placed Ukrainian troop losses at 80,000 killed and 400,000 wounded. Estimates from June of this year show that approximately 1 million Russian soldiers have been killed or wounded. These are people's sons. These are people's brothers, their cousins, their husbands. And an entire generation of Ukrainian men are being wiped out, and so are Russian men. This isn't something the American people should pay for. Thank you, Ms. Speaker.
Gentlewoman from Minnesota is recognized.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Once again, I just want to stress to the body, and I believe this is a huge mistake, but the majority has already eliminated any funding for Ukraine security assistance initiative in this bill. So the amendment accomplishes not cutting any funding. But I would like to just point out again, Madam Chair, when I talked about international war crimes and the previous speaker was talking about, the loss of life in Ukraine, there are 20,000 Ukrainian children who have been kidnapped by Russia, ripped from their homes, the arms of their mothers and fathers. That's a war crime, and we should not be silent on that. And with that, I thank President Trump for now realizing it's important that we come to Ukraine's aid through our NATO partners, and I yield back.
Gentlewoman yields back.